Hello and welcome back to the Rookie CEO podcast. How are you, Sam?
Yes. I hate that you call me Sam. Everyone refers to me as Fuzz. People think that Sam's the guest sometimes when you say Sam.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, enough about us. We are joined today by Zoe Bowles. Have I pronounced that right?
You have.
I have. Amazing. Do you want to introduce yourself, your business, and what you do day to day?
Yeah, I'm Zoe. I am co-founder of Agar Bowles Ltd. We're a compliance company. So we support our clients with a lot of health and safety, quality, environmental management, and we've recently branched out into training as well.
What are kind of common, I think people are, well, to an extent, I think business owners are getting a bit more literate that there are actually things and rules they have to follow. Is there anything that you kind of walk into business that it's a really simple thing that often is just missed altogether?
All the time. I think people look at compliance, specifically safety, and they get really scared about it because it's complicated, it's confusing, it's written for everybody. So no matter whether you are a small business owner, whether you're a single person, whether you've got 250 staff, the legislation that you're reading is all the same. And it's understanding how you then make that relevant to your business. So what most people do is nothing. And they hide their head in the sand, they ostrich it, and they go, nope, not listening, not reading, I'll be all right. Nothing will go wrong. I've been doing this for 30 years. We hear those things all the time. But actually, compliance means different things to different people. And it's knowing how to break that down into, well, what do I need to look at? And sometimes it's as simple as having a fire risk assessment because you have premises.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that. But only in as much as knowing what you need rather than making it complicated.
Yeah.
I think just the word risk assessment to some small businesses, they're just like, I don't think I need that. Just the words risk assessment gives them probably PTSD.
Yeah.
I also think it's the cost associated with it. They think, oh, great, this is going to cost me a fortune.
Cost, is it? It's not a cost if they know what they're doing. But if they don't know what they're doing, that's when to outsource, right?
Absolutely. And I think the problem is that you've got a lot of health and safety companies who will say, we have a bronze and a silver and a gold package, and you have to put your business in a box. That doesn't work. So a lot of people will look at those options and they'll say, well, I need a bit of bronze, but I also need that bit out of silver and that one item out of gold. But then what do? Do you pay for gold and then hate it every month when you're paying this amount that you're only using a small part of? Or do you pay for bronze? And let's just ignore the bit in silver and a bit in gold that I wanted and needed, didn't want to pay for it. So putting your business in a compliance box is really difficult, and actually it should be much more about working with somebody or having somebody in-house that can go, well, we don't need that, but we do need this, and looking at the risks to their business and saying, well, what do we do that's potentially going to harm somebody? Or what do we do that is a legislative requirement or an obligation or something we need to do because the law says so, because that's when you can start to build your package and making it relevant, and then looking at your activities and saying, well, what do we do already that meets those requirements? Let's not change it. It's what we know, it's what we are familiar with, and it's what works. And that's where it should stay. Something that's unique to your business. Yes, you can download templates. Yes, you can buy a RAMS pack, but they're only as good as having a competent person that can look at it and tailor it to your business. Because otherwise they're someone else's RAMs. And we see a lot, especially in construction, where RAMs get thrown back or rejected by, say, a principal contractor. You sort of have a review of them with the client. You say, it's because they're not really yours. You've not tailored them properly, or you've not mentioned, you're working at height, how are you going to get there? You've missed something. And I think it's because a lot of people will go to Google, or they'll go to, there's companies out there that you can download risk assessments. There's nothing wrong with them. They're a great starting point. But that's what they are. They're a starting point that you then mould and make them your own.
Yeah.
For our listeners, what are RAMs?
RAMs are risk assessments and method statements combined into one document that essentially tells you what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and then extracting those risks and then putting the control measures into place to say, well, if this is what we're doing, how are we going to do it in the safest way?
So I would assume that maybe construction companies' compliance is more on their radar than other companies. Is there kind of companies that aren't in construction and there's things they're completely missing? I know you briefly mentioned like fire risk assessments. say if you have a small team or you're a sole trader that's just started to employ, what typically, if they're in an office environment, is their first step?
So I think it's looking at your premises. So a lot of places, if you have, say, an office, you should have a premises risk assessment, even covering things like slips and trips. But then you've got things like first aid, fire preparedness, emergency response, things like DSE. There's a legal obligation if you're working at a PC or a workstation regularly to assess that you're doing that safely. And all of these things sort of get forgotten. And I think it's the easiest things that can trip you up. You've only got to have somebody who works with you for a number of years, develops a back condition, and they can attribute it to a poor workstation. We all have employers' liability insurance. The reason we have that is because there's always a potential that actually your workplace activities could be what causes somebody harm or injury. It's there to protect you, but it's only as good if you can back up that you've done the right thing to begin with. So you've looked at those risks and you've mitigated those risks as far as reasonably practicable, which is a really good safety term, because really what they're saying is to your means. Whereas, say, a small business owner, maybe 10 employees, is not expected to do the same level as somebody who has 200 employees, because you're working on a smaller scale. You're probably working on smaller projects, but you've also got less people to worry about and be concerned about. It's funny because in health and safety law, you don't need to document a health and safety management system until you have 5 or more employees. So it's almost like, well, 1 to 4, we can be a little bit loose, we can be a little bit informal. But actually, it only takes one of those employees to maybe have an accident at work. And then what have you got to back yourself up, to cover yourself?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say to people, go out and put a whole health and safety package in if it's just you or just you two, but make sure you've covered yourself. You know, what do you do that could cause harm, and how do you protect those people? Do you train them? Do they know what the risks are involved in their job roles?
Yeah.
Because that's quite difficult.
New lead came in on Tuesday. I meant to follow up actually, but I got a bit busy. And then it was Friday, then the following Wednesday, and then they went with someone else. Someone else. Naming no names. I know it was you, Dave. Fuzzy Logic sends automated follow-ups the moment a lead lands. Email, SMS, WhatsApp, while you're doing, well, whatever you want. Book a free demo at fuzzylogic.systems.
Most businesses now, I say most because I am one of them, aren't employing. They are subcontracting or they're working with teams who already have their own business. Is it the same approach?
That can be difficult to determine. And one of the things that we always see is our clients might contact us and say, oh, there's been an accident on site, but it was one of our subcontractors. And there's this sort of pushing and shoving about, well, who is responsible? Now, it's quite easy in construction because you have the CDM regulations, so you have defined roles and responsibilities. But it gets more tricky in other industries. I think the thing to think about is if you've employed them or you've contracted them to do a part of the job, you have an obligation. Now, you could review that and you could say, well, you need to give me your RAMs of how you're going to do it, and you sign them off. So you're not doing their RAMs, but you are making sure that they've got them, they are competent to do the job that you've employed them to do, and that as far as you know, they're working safely in the job they're carrying out under your brand. And that's due diligence. So making sure they know what they're doing.
Fair.
Not just taking their word for it, or, you know, back in the day when it was, well, Joe down the pub, he's going to do that for me. That's where a lot of business began. But, you know, what safeguards did you have in place to know that, well, jobs, you know, John says that he's an electrician or a plumber or a chippy. How do I know that? He says he can do it. Is he qualified? Does he have insurance? Does he know what he's doing, and is he working safely?
So would you maybe say if you're subcontracting to people to maybe just check they have their own insurances? Absolutely.
Check they've got, set your criteria. So we talk to people a lot when we do ISO 9001, which is a quality management standard. We talk to them about supplier approval, and it's setting the bar as to where you want that contractor to be. Not necessarily the same for every kind of contractor as well, because you're not going to expect an electrician to have the same qualifications as your plumbers or your other trades. But what you're saying is the minimum standard we want our contractors to have would be insurance to a certain level. We might want them to have something like ISO 9001 because they're coming third party approved. Mm-hmm. Someone's checked their systems, they know they're working the way they should be working, and we're going to get a good service. But they're safe.
I never really looked into ISO. At what point would you advise businesses to look into that?
So we work with clients who are single person businesses. They have ISO 9001. We also put that into clients who have 200, 300 employees. It can apply to everybody. This is almost what makes it complicated because the standards are written to be applicable to anybody doing anything in any industry. But we always say to people, I might have an inquiry and I say, I want ISO 9001. That's really exciting. Why? It's a bit of a strange sales technique, you know. Why do you want it? And you kind of get one of two responses. I need it because I'm getting pre-qualification questionnaires, so PQQs or tenders that say, if you don't have it, we won't work with you. So they need it to expand their client base. Then you've got those that want it. And that sort of splits again. Those that want it because it looks good on the wall. Great, it does. They look lovely. But they're not going to give you a return on your investment because they're just going to sit on the wall and people might walk past and go, that's pretty. But it doesn't mean anything to their client base. They don't need it yet. They're not going to see that return. Then you've got those that want it because they know it's coming. Maybe they can see their industry changing. They can look down the line and go, okay, I don't need it now, but in a year's time, when my plan is to grow, I know I'm going to need it to get some feet in the door. So they start thinking about it early, which is a great place to do it, good time to do it as well.
What does it entail then? Like, what's the expense? What's the sort of timing? What?
So it can be very client specific. Those that follow me on LinkedIn will see that I have a bit of a bugbear with companies at the moment who are shouting about ISO 9001 in 30 days. You can't guarantee that. There's some out there that are saying, we'll do it in a week. It's the same as health and safety. Yes, you can go on, you can buy a compliance pack that's going to make you worthy of 9001. The problem is that's someone else's management system. And what you're trying to do is put a square peg in a round hole. So with ISO 9001, it's really about evaluating your business, who you are, why you're here, what you're meeting, whose needs you're meeting, then using that to inform things like, well, what are my risks and what are my opportunities to grow my business? Or what's going on in the world that if the politicians anywhere in the world push that button, how does that impact me and how am I going to protect my business from that risk? To then informing things like your processes and your procedures so that you meet those client needs. And then what do we do when things go wrong? Do we just stick a plaster over it and hope it doesn't happen again? Or do we really pick it apart and understand what went wrong, why it went wrong, and maybe what we can change to prevent it happening again? And that's really kind of the standard in a nutshell. Comfortably speaking, you can probably implement it with a company maybe within 3-ish months, but that depends on the size, the number of people involved, whether they work in one office or across 5 different mini hubs. So there are variables there, but to get the real bones in place, probably about 3 to 6 months. Certification's a bit different because you're inviting another company into the equation. So your certification body will come in and they'll see that you're doing what you say you're doing. That can obviously put a bit of a spanner in the works if they're busy, their timelines might be 6 months. So yeah, there are some variables, but 3 to 6 months is a good aim.
I'm assuming there is a cost to it.
There is. So you don't have to have a consultant to do ISO 9001. It helps because they understand the criteria.
Yeah.
The problem with the standards is they're written like you need to be a lawyer to understand them. That's not to trip you up. That's because they can apply to anybody. So they can't be specific about what they want because you can achieve ISO 9001 whether you work in education, construction, cleaning, hygiene, pest control. All these different industries can all still meet the criteria because realistically they're not a standard of work. They're a set of outputs that you need to demonstrate that you meet. How you meet them is entirely up to you. So again, you're not changing your business to meet the requirements. You're applying those requirements to how you work. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with the standards. People think, oh, well, I'll have to turn my business upside down. Not at all. If what you're doing meets those outputs, don't change it.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're good at. That's how you do it. And if everybody changed their business to meet the standard, you'd all be the same. And then where's your differentiation? What makes you stand out as a great social media company or a great compliance company or a great contractor?
Hey Hev, have you heard of IT Managed Services? They're an IT support service based in Kent.
Yeah, I've been with them for over a year now. I love being able to just call them at any point and they take over my computer and fix the issue so much quicker than spending hours on Google.
Why have you kept that to yourself all this time? Right, I need to sign up to these guys. What's their website?
It's it-ms.co.uk or you can call 01634 218 362.
Going back to the expense thing, sorry, because I know our listeners are going to be very much like, well, how much is it going to cost me?
Absolutely.
Is it a yearly thing that you have to pay for?
So if you pay for a consultant, you can pay them just to implement. You can pay them to maintain the system with you on an ongoing basis. And we all vary. It can be a little bit like how long's a piece of string. But what's really right is that you find a consultant that's right for you, because we're not right for every business. It depends on the consultant's background and experience as to whether they understand you. Then you've got your certification body fees, which are a little bit more fixed. You can run a very quick quote on any of their websites, which gives you a really good indication as to what they're going to cost you. Then they roll around every year. You have a 3-year cycle. So you have, when you first certify, it's in 2 parts. Then the year after that, you have a surveillance audit. The year after that, you have another surveillance audit. And those surveillances are really picking parts of the standard to check you're still doing what you were doing a year ago. Then on the 3rd year, you have what's called a recertification audit. So go through all of it, just like you did in the beginning. That rolls around every 3 years. But you're also not married to a certification body. You can change. You can find one that's better suited to you. You can pick your certification body based on any criteria. I've had clients who say, well, it has to be a certification body that has red branding because it matters to us that their branding matches and complements our branding. Looks good on the website, looks great in our email signatures. So there really is lots of different ways that you can pick a cert body. One thing I would say is buyer beware. Make sure that you are looking at a UCAS accredited certification body if you're in the UK. The reason being is you know that someone's checking the checker. And that's quite important because there's a lot of non-UCAS certification bodies out there. They don't necessarily tell you they're not UCAS accredited. And then you take your ISO 9001 certificate that you're really proud of, you put it in front of a prospective client, and they throw it out at you and say, it's not UCAS, we're not accepting it.
Wow. Is that almost a scam, is it? Or?
No, because there's nothing that says you can't be a certification body without UCAS.
Oh, wow,
but then
okay.
you've got, say, for example, again, back in construction, you'll have tier 1 contractors who will say, I want it to be a UCAS accredited management system, because they want to know that the chain of command has done the due diligence and that someone's checking the checker. It would be like sending your child to a school that wasn't regulated by Ofsted. No one's checking they're meeting the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, you can't guarantee that the system they've got in place is any use.
I could start a certification body tomorrow and start printing certificates from my back room. And that is kind of the equivalent of being an unaccredited UCAS supplier because no one's checking that I'm doing it right. Yeah. No one's checking or verifying that I'm upholding the requirements of the standard.
Have you, out of curiosity, have you bumped into any that's not accredited when you're networking?
Yeah, we see quite a lot of it.
Wow.
Or we'll have inquiries and we talk people through the process. And 3-6 months later, you see them announce their UCAS accreditation and you sit there and you go, I'm really pleased for them, but it's not UCAS.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily understand it because no one's asked the right questions or they haven't done that check to make sure that what they're buying is what they need. It can be really simple. So when you go onto the UCAS website, there's a UCAS cert check. You plug the number in there and it will tell you whether it's UCAS accredited. So it really is quite easy to do if you know to do it. But that's the piece of information people are missing.
Cool. Gosh. Have you got a odd question for our guest to end the episode with?
Yeah, so basically for season 2, is it season 2 or season
We are
3?
season 2.
Season 2. I am ending each episode with just a really random question for our guests. So my random question for you would be, what is your... do you drink wine?
I do.
What would your preferred wine stem be? Do you prefer a thick stem or a thin stem?
What does that even mean? Sorry, that
So
was
don't
that
drink wine, so you wouldn't
confused.
know. All of the viewers that drink wine will know what I mean, because if I, well, to be honest, I don't actually really drink anymore, but if I was to have a glass of wine, I would have a white wine and I would like ice and a really thin stem.
Oh, the actual glass itself.
Yeah.
I would have stick in a pint glass. Yeah.
Clearly not a wine drinker. For me, it's a thick stem, usually because the glass itself then has a thicker glass. So my husband does most of the washing up in our house. And the amount of glasses that he has broken, because we have the main sink, then you have your little half sink, and you rinse stuff in the half sink, right? So you get all the soap suds, it's nice and bubbly and nice and clean, then you rinse it off. Somehow between the main sink and the half sink is, your taps.
Just smashing glass
Smash a
everywhere.
glass or clink the
You
glass.
must constantly have plasters on.
It's a nightmare. So for me, the thicker the better.
Yeah.
It's easier to put down, not smash, not break.
Does your kitchen have a risk assessment?
Oh, it totally should do. I also have cupboards at the top that open. They're about the same height as me. And the amount of times I walk around, I have cuts to the forehead. I should wear my hard hat indoors. Or I need to shrink. I don't think I'm past growing, so that's not the option. I need to shrink a little bit, I think, because my top cupboards are just the right height to catch me on the corner. But no, thick stem glass, easier to break, or less easy to break, should I say, and better survival.
Amazing, Megan. Well, if anyone's listening, if you want to comment below what wine glass you would prefer, just for my enjoyment.
It's a market research. You're making some wine glasses for people.
New product. Rookie CEO wine glasses.
Love it. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of The Rookie CEO.
Thank you. Bye.